if Test Match Special is now something of an institution, it was never planned. It's the most haphazard growth. Like Topsy, it just growed. It began after the war, and it's important, I think, that many people won't realise how primitive it was in those days. When cricket restarted in 1946, of course, the county clubs were mature, experienced, and headed by men who'd been long in the game. But cricket broadcasting just grew off the cuff. When we first met for the first test of 1946, I think I can say that only two of the commentators, Rex Alston and Jim Swanton, even knew each other. The rest of us were a ragbag of Indians, Englishmen, journalists, odd broadcasters. I myself had been sent only because I was working in the Eastern Service as a poetry producer. I had played some cricket, pretty badly I may say, and they thought that I'd get the names of the Indian players right. It's the only reason I was ever there. It was all exciting, underpaid, very funny, very comradely, and one learnt to do commentary as one went along. It was realised that before the war, even as eminent a person as Howard Marshall, one of the greatest of all broadcasters, wasn't let into Lord's to broadcast, and some of the best summaries he ever put out were done from a house in St John's Wood Road. So after the war, there was all the way to go for cricket, and you could guess that if you saw the kind of place they put the commentators in. It was a tiny balcony at Lord's, a couple of huts at the Oval, 2 huts at Trent Bridge, which suddenly grew to 3, to our great excitement one year, until we found it had been set up by an Australian commercial broadcasting undertaking and that they'd got the best commentary position in the world, or in England anyway. Manchester, well, the little box there was perched on the wall at the Warwick Road end. I can remember my alarm one day at seeing C.B. Fry at the age of 70 come up the steps of the grandstand and vault onto the landing of that little box without even dropping his monocle out of his eye. He used to do comments. It was all very exciting, all very challenging, and all very piecemeal. For a very long time, for instance, there was no running story all day long of the cricket. It used to be cut in and out of programmes, and the BBC, I think, was surprised by 2 things. First of all, when the overseas countries, Australia, South Africa and the West Indies at first, demanded complete ball-by-ball commentary all day long, and then listeners at home started to write in asking for the wavelengths of these overseas services. It was only then, I think, that the BBC realised what a terrific public there was for it. It became a habit, the in thing, to listen to it, even if you knew nothing about cricket. And, of course, one always remembers that famous lady in Oscar Wilde who knew nothing at all about music but was very fond of musicians. And I fancy that a lot of people being fond of cricketers through listening to the commentary who didn't know the slightest thing about the game. They wouldn't learn much from many of us either. And it must be remembered, I think, that much of the growth of this depended on the fact that the cricket was both nostalgic and excellent. 1946, the excuse for 1946, of course, was that it was cricket again, and for many people that was a sign of normality. 1947, the very popular South African side, and of course it was the summer of Compton and Edrich when they performed their amazing and record-breaking feats. 1948 was Don Bradman's farewell tour, when he made what was in effect a royal progress round the country. People flocked to see him. Grounds were full everywhere when the counties played the Australians. As great contrast, I fear, to touring side spectators nowadays. 1949 was quiet. The New Zealanders were extremely popular, extremely friendly, but there was a great county championship that year fought out between Yorkshire and Middlesex, who finished level in the end. And then in 1950, of course, came the West Indians. To the delight of the new immigrants, Ramadan and Valentine bowled themselves into a calypso, and West Indies won most spectacularly. And by then, the radio audience for cricket had been well and truly established. But one thing I think must be said, you can't imagine a more comradely atmosphere than we've had in the box. I made a terrific number of friends there. The chief troubles, I suppose, people trying to suppress laughter at some in-joke made by the commentator. But it was always great fun. I'm sure it always will be. And you get this, I'm sure you get this over the air. It's the quality of friendliness, fun, amusement, and sheer good spirits. And, of course, a leading figure in that, notable for not merely bad jokes, but probably the worst jokes ever made by anybody at all, is Brian Johnston, who takes up the story now.
Well, thanks awfully, Arlo. I'll try to resist the temptation of making any bad jokes so as not to give you any punishment. But I think we'd like to first of all introduce the members of our Test match special team we've got. We haven't got them all here. We haven't got Earl Blurs, we haven't got the Alderman, we haven't got Arl, we haven't got the Bearded Wonder. But we have got Trevor Bailey, we've got Fred Truman and Christopher Martin Jenkins, from now on called the Boyles of Frederick and Jenkers. And I think we'll start off, as this is all about Test matches, let's try and recall our first memory of a Test match. I can only do so, obviously, as a non-player. And I was very lucky. In 1930, I went to Lord's. I saw Percy Chapman make 121. He hit Grimmett for 6 sixes. And then when Australia batted, I saw Bradman caught marvellously by Chapman at backward point. And that was my very first Test match, and I shall always remember that one. Trevor, you were lucky to play in a Test match. So what's your first memory?
I played my first Test against New Zealand in 1949. I managed to get some wickets, but the thing that really hits me more than anything else was on the Sunday, because in those days they were 3-day Test matches against New Zealand. We started on the Saturday, and on the Sunday I woke up, my wife was with me, and I had violent hay fever, terrible hay fever, and I didn't know what to do. I'd come up by train and I saw a bus which said Harrogate, and I thought, my geography has always been very good, that must be the seaside. So we both got onto it and went straight to Harrogate, arrived there, got off, and we walked down looking for people carrying buckets and spades and couldn't understand, and suddenly realised we were a little way from the sea. That's my most vivid memory.
It's the effect of a first Test match. What about you, Fred?
Well, my first Test match, Brian, was also at Headingley, of course, back in 1952.
I saw it.
I was in the Royal Air Force at the time, and I remember getting a phone call, possibly on the Thursday or the Friday, to say that I had been chosen to play in the Test. And it must have been a newspaper reporter, because I thought it was a hoax call and put the phone down. And then a couple of minutes later, the phone rang again, and it was Bill Bowes, the old Yorkshire and England fast bowler, and my coach, to congratulate me. So I knew I was in the 12 for the Test at Headingley. And being a Yorkshireman, I suppose you couldn't ask for a better ground to make a debut on. And of course, in the second innings, there's that famous picture of the scoreboard showing 4 wickets for no runs, of which I had 3 and Alec Bedstrad 1. So that's my first memory of a Test match.
You didn't have a bad first series, 24 wickets or something like that? You'll correct me if I'm wrong, because you know all your figures.
Yes. well, I've always been a person of facts and figures, reading the books. I love the history of the game. I like to go right back, even to, let us talk about something like the 12th century. When
good cricket then, yes. I was commentating then.
Yeah, well, I know, I was going to bring that in. But the thing was that the first mention of the word cricket comes from Marseille in France, cricket, which was spelt C-R-I-Q-E-T. That is the first recollection we can find of this great game that is still going now in the 20th century. It's the greatest game in the world.
Jenkers, what's your first Test memory?
The following year, I think, Brian, at the Oval 1953 in particular, the fact that we won the Ashes that year. I suppose a lot of people had got television for the coronation, and our family had, and that, I think, is when I first really became obsessed with cricket. And that particular match, with England winning the Ashes after that long time of Australian domination, Laker and Locke, in the early years of Surrey's control of the county championship, they bowled Australia out in the second innings. And then I remember your commentary, in fact, with Arthur Morris being put on by Lindsay Hassett at the end, and Dennis Compton hitting the winning run.
2 balls to go this over from Morris. 4 runs to get. No, is it the Ashes? Yes, England have won the Ashes.
Wonderful moment for a enthusiastic schoolboy.
Yes, he swept him once, which looked like being 4, but the claw, Alan Davidson, remember, stuck out a hand and stopped it. So all the crowd had to rush back again, and then the next ball he did sweep it. Whether the ball, I don't know, Trevor, you were playing, did it ever get to the boundary? We don't know, really, because the
I
crowd
don't
came
think
on.
anyone really knew or really cared. By that time we were home and dry.
The Oval produces marvellous games, I suppose often because it's the final one and everything. But if we go back to 1948, which of us saw the great Bradman in 48? You played against him, Trevor.
I played against the Don 3 times. He was well past it. He's just scored 300s, and therefore I was rather thankful that I never bowled against him when he could bat. He really was rather handy.
Did you play against him when Essex played?
Oh, yes.
A little match?
Yes. When we bowled them out in a day, the slight snag being that 721 runs they got. But no, I bowled against him 3 times, got 300s, trapped him once, 147 with a long hop. He could bat.
Did you see him in that year, Fred, or not?
Yes, I did see him. The only time I ever saw him actually in a first-class match. I took a day off work. I was a Sheffield United member, so I sat in the members' stand, and I saw the great Don walk down. And when he came out to bat, the crowd standing up all round the ground, packed to the ginnels, and just standing, waiting for the great man to appear, and clap him all the way to the wicket. For a young boy that I was in those days, the most marvellous, moving sight, I suppose, that here was somebody that was extra special and appreciated by the great crowd at Bramall Lane, which of course was always known as possibly the most knowledgeable crowd in England in those days.
And of course it happened to him at the Oval. With the Test match, they all stood and cheered, and Norman Yardley, your Earl Yorkshire captaining
yes.
England, called for 3 cheers. Now I've asked the Don, I said, did it affect you? Did you cry or anything? Or, he said no, but he must have had a bit of mist in his eye.
The Australians have been batting now for what, 2 hours? 2 hours and a quarter, just over 2 hours and a quarter. Here's the applause for Bradman as he comes in.
We've got a rather nice record of it anyhow, of his last innings there in a Test match, which in a sense was a tragedy, but very well described by, I think, Rex Olsen and John Arlott.
Well, it's a wonderful reception. The whole crowd is standing, and the England team are joining in, and led by Yardley, 3 cheers for the Don as he gets to the wicket. Yardley went up to Bradman and shook him by the hand and then called for 3 cheers. And now the crowd settled down again. They've got 40 minutes more left for play. And Bradman is now taking guard. Hollies is going to bowl at him. And John Arlott shall describe the first ball. So come on, John.
Well, I don't think I'm as deadly as you are, Rex. I don't expect to get a wicket. But it's rather good to be here when Don Bradman comes in to bat his last Test. And now here's Hollies to bowl to him from the Vauxhall end. He bowls, Bradman goes back in the direction of the Houses of Parliament, which are out beyond mid-off. It doesn't go that far, it merely goes to Watkins at silly mid-off. No runs, still 117 for 1. 2 slips, a silly mid-off and a forward short leg close to him as Hollies pitches the ball up slowly and he's bowled. Bradman bowled Hollies, naught. Bowled Hollies, naught. And what do you say under those circumstances? I wonder if you see a ball very clearly in your last Test in England, a ground where you played out some of the biggest cricket of your life, and where the opposing team have just stood round you and given you 3 cheers and the crowd has clapped you all the way to the wicket. I wonder if you really see the ball at all. Anyway, Bradman went forward, it was Hollies googly, it clean bowled him, groping right down the pitch, and he was just beaten all the way. I think he was completely out of his crease and would have been stumped if it hadn't hit the wicket. He didn't seem to make any attempt to get back. He knew it had bowled him. Australia are 117 for 2 in reply to England's 52.
Jenkins, we've got 2 useful cricketers sitting at this table. Just look back and say what you thought of them as cricketers when you first took an interest in cricket. But what do you think as Bailey when you used to hear of these great innings and how he saved England at Lords and so on?
Well, I think, honestly, to be honest, Trevor, I remember more as a bowler because of his lovely action. And Fred, both of them had classic actions, slightly different, but both glorious actions. I remember all sorts of things about Trevor. One tremendous catch he caught in the gully, I think it was, against New Zealand. I don't know if he remembers that. Fred's fielding at short leg, he's hitting, and of course Trevor's sterling defence. I mean, both of them could do a bit with both bat and ball, but above all, I think they're superb actions.
Well, the sterling defence, yes, in 1953 at Lords. I think you went in at 12:42, and I think you were out at, as if I didn't know, 5:50, I think, in the evening. And I always remember the look on your face, because you skied a ball, I think, towards mid-off, and you looked up into the heavens and you were saying something.
It was a very silly shot. It was off Richie Benaud, and I'd gone through all the difficult part, and I got myself out playing an extravagant shot, which was simply all wrong. But it was an interesting day, because the thing that irritated me was coming up with my wife from Southend by train, and I got one or two of the daily papers with us, and they'd all written us off before the day had even started. Now, I don't mind being written off, but I hadn't even gone into bat then. I thought that was overdoing it a little bit, so I was a little bit anti, because Compo was still there. Dennis was batting with Watson at the start of the day. I came in next. And we stayed there. I think the Australians made a mistake in how they handled their bowling. And the thing I remember most about that day was my wife's hat, and also the fact that I ate Willie Watson's lunch as well as my own. I've always eaten pretty well.
Would you advocate that for a batsman who's not out at lunch?
Well, it suited me. I've always been a hungry sort of individual.
Well, what's coming through to me is that he didn't have a car, did he? Because he went by train to Lords and he went by bus to Harrogate.
Cricketers couldn't afford cars in those days.
They're not amateurs.
I didn't drive very well.
Well, you don't drive very well now. But
Very good off the back foot or forward defensive. You never drove well. I quite agree. We're talking about the bowling. Then we'll talk about Fred's batting as well, because a slight contrast, Trevor Bailey. There was one occasion, Fred, I think, where you actually hit a few sixes at Lords. You were playing against the West Indies and you hit that Ramadin, who a lot of people found very difficult to play, and you did hit him for 3 sixes. Would you just listen to Rex Olson describing it?
406 for 9. Ramadin bowls to Truman, a tremendous high hit, and it's very nearly a 6. It is a 6. Into the crowd at long on. The ball temporarily lost as it pitched in among those sitting behind the boundary board at long on and bounced into the members' friends stand to our right and disappeared underneath a seat. It's now back in Ramadin's hands, and he bowls to Truman, who has a tremendous swing at that one again. Cross-batted swing, nearly pulled himself off his feet, and he missed the ball and the ball missed the wicket. Truman 24, England 412 for 9. And Ramadin bowls again. Truman has hit another one, another 6. Over Weeks' head, into the crowd, and Weeks has fallen over the boundary board and is being picked up by the spectators. I hope he isn't hurt. He hasn't appeared yet. Yes, he's all right. Broad grin on his face. Running back in an attempt to, in the hope that he would catch that. He forgot there was a board there and tripped over it into the crowd, but meanwhile the ball had gone right over the heads of the spectators right near the boundary board. Another 6 from Truman. And the next one is a full toss, and he tries to swing that and is very annoyed with himself, waves his arm at the crowd. Truman's got 30, 418 for 9 now. And Ramadin bowls again. Truman's hit another high one. It's going into Weeks' hands, so it's another 6. Same place.
A lot of people, because I batted down at 9, 10 or 11, the reason I batted down there was because, first of all, in Yorkshire they thought I was there for my bowling. And secondly, it was very difficult to get in any earlier when you had people like Brian Close coming in at number 7. So that was the depth of the batting. But I remember Herbert Sutcliffe saying to me, the great Herbert, saying, look, I've seen you play and you can bat, and there's no reason why you shouldn't get your head down and average at least 20 in a county season. And I liked to bat. I did. I used to love to bat. I used to love to hit the ball. And of course, nothing gave me greater pleasure than hitting sixes.
Jenkins, you've been very lucky. You've been on for a lot of times when good things have happened. You might have liked to have been on the 1956 Lakers year.
Gosh, yes, I would indeed. I mean, that again was another game I remember watching on the telly and listening to on the radio. But in particular, to be honest, I remember seeing those 19 wickets of Jim's at Old Trafford, which must be the most amazing bowling feat of all time, really.
Now Laker comes in, bowls, and Maddox drives to cover. Well, Old Trafford has redeemed itself with the last hour of flawless sunshine. And Laker comes in again, hair flopping, bowls, turns it on to Maddox, appeals, he's out, LBW, and Laker's taken all 10. The first man to congratulate him is Ian Johnson. And England have won by an innings and 170, and Laker has taken all 10 wickets for 53 in the second innings, all 10 for 53. Now, for statistical necessity, if I may use the phrase, I'm going to read you today's scorecard. Play started at 20 minutes to 12 with Australia 84 for 2. Then MacDonald caught Oakman, bowled Laker 89. Craig LBW Laker 38. Mackay caught Oakman, bowled Laker 0. Now here's the avenue forming up for Laker there as May pushes him ahead to go in first into the pavilion. All the members standing, waving their scorecards, standing up on the balcony, leaning down and applauding him. He runs up the pavilion steps, in through that crowd, and is followed into the pavilion. And there are friends of mine who said they weren't going to come today, they thought it'd rain. Well, I admit it did look as if it was going to rain. They missed a very great piece of bowling.
Unbelievable, really. And
Oh, it has to be, yes.
At the end of the game, I came in with Peter Richardson and I said, you do realise, Peter, that we're never going to see this feat again. Because the remarkable thing, all right, it was very remarkable that Jim should get 19 wickets. The thing that I couldn't understand was how a bowler as good as Tony Locke at the other end could only get 1. And that, to my mind, was the most fascinating thing about the whole lot, because it was turning square from the word go. And Lockie liked getting wickets. There was no generosity there. He wasn't not trying to get wickets. He was trying desperately to get wickets. And he only got 1. And that, to my mind, is the most fascinating thing about the whole operation.
the other thing was that Jim Laker, after he got his 10th wicket, went and collected his sweater from the umpire. No one jumped on his back and kissed him, and they more or less all walked off. I know they then formed a lane for him to go through. There was no kissing in those days.
I was 12th man, actually, in that match, and Alan Oakman, he caught 5 or 6 catches, Alan Oakman, at short
Very
leg.
useful.
And I remember it so well, and Trevor is quite right when he says it was extraordinary that a bowler like Tony Locke should only get 1 wicket. But if you look back and you think about it, Trevor, and you remember that match, it was there for all to see. On a turning wicket, Jim Laker pitched the ball up and Lockie bowled it far too short. And in fact...
And faster and faster.
And faster and faster. And Colin MacDonald was actually cutting Tony Locke ball after ball. In fact, I think Colin MacDonald must have made 70 or 80 in the second innings, if I remember rightly. And Tony Locke bowled far, far too fast and far too short.
Well, Jenkins, you weren't commentating then, but you were commentating on 2 occasions. I must say, when Earl Jenkins gets going in the box and something exciting happens, we put cotton wool in our ears because he does sometimes go over the top. There's a marvellous occasion in 1981 at Edgbaston. There was an occasion, I think, when Botham, wasn't it, took 5, 11 or something. I think we really must listen to this bit of commentary.
Up comes Botham now. He bowls to Alderman.
I know them, and England have won. 121 all out, Australia. England have won by 30 runs. 29, thanks, Bill, sorry. 29 runs, and the stumps are uprooted by the players as souvenirs. The disconsolate figure of Rodney Hogg is lost amongst a sea of spectators as he is the last player to leave the field. A tired-looking Dickie Bird is even behind him, and the spectators come on like ants round a tasty bit of meat. The meat in this case being the pavilion where the ants will gather now to cheer their heroes. An incredible spell by Ian Botham has finished off Australia. He's taken 5 for 11 in the last...
Do you really get as excited there? What happens to it?
Yes, I was a bit excited there, I must admit. The thing was, there was such a noise in the ground that one really had to raise one's voice to get above it anyway. It was a broiling hot day, if you remember, and that was a wonderful summer in 1981. It'll become more wonderful as years go by, I think, and we look back on it, especially if we've seen the best of Botham, because that was the annus mirabilis par excellence.
How wise
to
not
mix
to
my
attempt the
Latin
Latin
and my French. But it was, I mean, that I think was one of the tensest and most thrilling afternoons cricket I can ever remember. That Sunday of the Edgbaston Test.
You were a little bit quieter there at Headingley. Remember that occasion? That was Boycott, who rather timed his 100/100th rather well.
Chappell turns, goes in again. Boycott, 96 not out. He bowls to him. It's a half volley, drives it down the ground, and there it is. He's done it. He lifts both hands in the air. Jeff Boycott has got his 100th 100, and the crowd cannot resist coming on to the pitch any longer.
Yes, I suppose when he looks back at his cricketing career, if it ever ends, that will be his finest hour. It was a tremendous moment for him. Again, another hot day, another full house, and a wonderful build-up. And I remember that he was perhaps a little bit lucky to get the benefit of the umpire's doubt playing a ball down the leg side to Ray Bright. Having to survive that appeal, it seemed inevitable that he was going to get his 100 before his home crowd.
Because 1981 was an incredible year, starting that amazing match at Headingley when everything seemed lost. And I shall never forget the moment when Dilly joined Botham, and it looked as if they were just going to go and slog and just get out fairly easily and give the game up. But somehow it all came off, and the result that Botham scored the most magnificent 100, and of course England in the end won by 111 runs, something like that. But his 100 must have been one of the greatest innings I've seen in Test cricket.
Can he get this one run? It's Lawson bowling to him, and Botham swings it, and it's 4 runs, it's 4 more, and he's 100. He swung it at that one, it went flying through the gully in the air, but now Botham reaches his 100, he's at 103, and well played. And he gets a handshake from Chris Old, and he get a few more when he gets inside the dressing room. The players outside there on the veranda all applauding him, and 103 now, and it's 288 for 8. And he faced 87 balls, took 155 minutes, hit 1 6 and 19 fours. And I'll leave further commentary on that.
Well, it was a magnificent century. I mean, what more can you say? Well, you've read out the figures. It came quickly. It came in most spectacular fashion. It contained some wonderful shots. We shan't see a better 100 this season. In fact, we shan't see a much better 100 for a number of seasons. It was a superb innings. It's the best innings I've personally ever seen Botham play, sort of in context and everything. It was a wonderful performance. Yes, it was a marvellous exhibition of hitting. I don't mean slogging, it was sensible hitting, but I think the Australian captain must take a little bit of blame for what went on.
I also think that it was only a great innings from when he got to about 83. Mm. But from 83 to 148, I think it was, I thought he played magnificent. Mm. But up to 83, he could have been out half a dozen times, hitting at the ball, as Trevor says, edging over the slips and missing. And suddenly he realised that they were in front. And I think from 83 to 148, he played magnificent, on a wicket that was doing a bit.
Talking about Botham in 81, I think we mustn't forget the bowling of Bob Willis. Tremendous piece of bowling at Headingley, 8 wickets, you can't ask more than that. Great stuff.
Well, it's Willis now. Willis to Bright. Bright is 19, Australia 111 for 9, 19 short of victory. Here's Willis in, bowls to Bright. Bright bowled! The middle stumps out of the ground. England have won. They've won by 18 runs. Willis runs around, punching the air. The boys invade the ground, and the players run helter-skelter for the pavilion. Well, what a finish. Bright bowled Willis for 19. Willis has taken 8 wickets for 43, the best ever by an English bowler here at Headingley against Australia. His best in his Test career, in his entire career too. 8 for 32, I beg his pardon. But a phenomenal performance by Bob Willis, and Australia all out for 111. England have won by 18 runs. And one of our friends will be collecting a princely sum from the betting tent. Trevor, what an end.
Tremendous. A marvellous game of cricket and a terrific swing back to England. Superb bit of bowling by Bob Willis. 8 wickets, you can't ask for more than that. And once again, one can only say it's a funny old game, this.
Dramatic moments on Test Match Special have been a great many. I suppose one of the best ones, really, and I was jolly lucky, really, I wasn't on. Goodness knows what I'd have said. 1975, the streaker at Lord's. That great poet, plus, incidentally, a little bit of a commentator, John Arler. I mean, he really did describe that as well as anybody without putting a foot wrong, and I could have said so many awful things.
There's some signals going on to the dressing room. Warmer is running in. Lots of people are running out. Old is bringing Warmer what? Glass of water. Unusual, isn't it? And a freaker.
Oh, freaker!
We've got a freaker down the wicket now, not very shapely, and it's masculine. And I would think it's seen the last of its cricket for the day. The police are mustered, so are the cameramen, and Greg Chappell, and now he's had his load, he's being embraced by a blonde policeman. And this may be his last public appearance, but what a splendid one. And so warm.
He flashed through the covers.
Many, of course, have done this on cold rugby grounds, but this chap has done it before 25,000 people on a day when he doesn't even feel cold. And he's now being marched down in the final exhibition past at least 8,000 people in the man stand, some of whom perhaps have never seen anything quite like this before.
That was perfect. You were snorting in the background in the box, weren't you, Trevor?
I was squeaking.
Not
shrieking,
you
squeaking.
were the first person who spotted it. You came out with, you said it's a
streaker.
A freaker.
No, you said
a freaker.
A freaker.
Yes.
Great moment that on the other moments. There's a certain occasion in 1964 at the Oval.
Truman with a bit of a scowl at the batsman. Doesn't even look friendly towards his fieldsman at the moment. In his 31st over, he's 2 wickets, wants a third. Truman in again. Bowls to Hawke, and Hawke goes forward and he's caught. There's the 300. There was no nicer touch than Truman congratulating Hawke. Caught by Cowdrey. Fred Truman's 300th Test wicket, the first man in the history of cricket to achieve the figure when Hawke played a half-hearted stroke outside the off stump to a ball that perhaps left him a little, took the outside edge, and Cowdrey swooped on it, 2 hands. It was high in the air. Up went Truman, up went the crowd, stood to him, cheered him, and as Hawke walked away, Truman congratulated him.
Fred, you must remember that.
Oh, yes, I'll never forget it, will I? It was something, I suppose, that I'd never dreamed of, and something that the experts said could never happen. They said that nobody would ever get 300 Test wickets in their career, not even thinking about a fast bowler. I had either 2 or 3 catches dropped before it actually happened. and it's when I took the ball from the captain and bowled at the pavilion end, and things happened.
And you literally did have to take it off Ted Dex. He wasn't going to let you bowl, was he?
Well, poor old Ted, who I admire a lot. I think he was a great guy, Ted, but he seemed to have lost his way a little bit there. I think he was possibly going to put Peter Parfitt on him, and I took the ball off him. I practically, I should think, 95% true that I put myself on the bowl. I remember, was it John Price saying, bloody hell, 300 test wickets.
And Neil Hawke, a great friend of yours. So
well, great friend of mine, Neil. And when he came down the wicket, he put his hand out and shook hands with me and said, well done, mate. We'll have a drink after the match. And I said, yeah. And I gave him a bottle of champagne, actually, that... I had a dozen bottles of champagne, and I said to Hawkey, there's one for you, which not many people know. He still has in his sideboard at home in Adelaide in Australia to this very day. Never drank it, he just kept it.
Oh, that's nice.
Because,
and a very nice tribute from a voice everybody will remember, Jack Fingleton. It's great to hear that voice again.
A nice, neat catch by Colin Cowdrey, and my heartiest congratulations as an Australian to one of the greatest fighters we've ever had against us. This chap has never beaten. He's always tried as long as I've known him. He's put everything he's got into the game, and it couldn't have happened to a greater fighter. Well done, Freddie Truman. 300 wickets. I think there's someone had ideas of putting a garland around Freddie's neck of Yorkshire white roses, but it didn't quite come off. Well done, Freddie Truman.
In fact, Jenkers, I mean, you can do his voice very well, can't you?
Well, as a matter of fact, Johners, it's a long time since I've heard Jack Fingleton speak, but the very first broadcast I ever did was with Fingo in 1972 on Test Match Special. He was very good to me, and although he slowed up a little bit in his speech after that particular broadcast that he made in 1964, he was a lovely, warm character and a very fine batsman, and I remember him with great endearment.
Another thing which happened at the Oval in 1978, for some reason I can't really remember, I became the first commentator ever, I think, and probably the last, to do a commentary in a policeman's helmet. How it came about, I don't know, but I remember describing it. Someone put it on my head. At the moment, it's Botham coming up to bowl to Burgess. Burgess is 16, and that one outside the off stump, and he pushes forward and he comes down the pitch. And I can reveal I've got something very strange on my head, and it is indeed a policeman's helmet which has been placed on my head, so I can go down as the only commentator who's ever commentated in a policeman's helmet on the Oval on a Thursday in July.
Hello 3 times.
Where the policeman is, I'm absolutely dreading he comes back. For goodness sake, take it off in a minute or I shall be arrested. So strange things happen in the commentary box. We haven't mentioned very much dear old Blowers. Blowers who... Now something has happened which very often does happen in the box. Someone has brought a delicious chocolate cake. And this has happened so often in the commentary box, and it's very touching the way people bring cakes to us, and people wait at the back door and says, my mum's baked this for you. And of course one has to tell the famous story of Alan McGilvray and the chocolate cake about 3 years ago now at Lord's, where someone had given me the chocolate cake. I cut into slices, had it on the bench in front of me while I was doing the commentary, and some one or two commentators taken a bit, and I was doing the commentaries and he ran up to bowl there and the ball goes through the wicketkeeper, and I saw Alan McGilvray come in, put his hand out, I nodded, and he took an enormous slice, put it into his mouth, and I immediately said, and now we'll ask Mel McGillers what he thought that last delivery, and of course crumbs all over the box and things, and because we've been mentioning old Blowers, and because Blowers in the box is absolutely marvellous. He's got this marvellous busitis business, hasn't he now?
Well, he loves the buses.
I mean, he's been, he runs up to bowl, goes through the wicketkeeper. I've seen number 2 bus going up St John's Wood Road, the 13 bus passing now, 113 bus, and you remember when we got to the Oval, he saw a good-looking bus come down Hartford Road. And
what about at Headingley when the inspector buses turn up with a timetable?
That's right. Yeah, that's good.
So we could get them in.
And I've had another letter, and the letter says, "Dear Sirs, I note your interest in the number of green and white-topped buses passing the Headingley cricket ground. I'm afraid Mr. Truman will be unlucky in his search for a blue-topped bus in the area, but in order to assist you in your bus spotting activities, I enclose a copy of the Leeds District Travel Guide, which contains details of services 7, 56, 91, 94, together with a timetable for services 74 and 76. All these services pass the ground and can be seen at the Kirkstall Lane end. Perhaps you may find watching them more absorbing than the cricket. Yours faithfully, L. English, District Traffic Officer. Thank you, Mr. English, very much.
And he's been having a marvellous time, hasn't he, in Pakistan? He saw a blue bus the other day, and he's got this auto rickshaw. I can see an auto rickshaw.
I don't know what an auto rickshaw is.
Well, I
know what a rickshaw is, but I don't know what an auto one is.
Well, you auto, but you don't. That's one of the jokes for John Arlott, especially put in. But 1980 was a great year. It was a centenary match at Lord's, which was better, in fact, off the field than on it, due partly to the bad weather. But it was a very sad occasion, a special one for us.
The sun bright, the wind still. We're just fluttering the distant flag out, the MCC flag on the Clerk of the Works office. Bright again, going round the wicket to the right-handed Boycott, and Boycott pushes this away between Silly Point and Slip. It's picked up by Mallet at short-third man. And that's the end of the over at 69 for 2. 9 runs off the over. 28 Boycott, 15 Gower, 69 for 2. And after Trevor Bailey, it will be Christopher Martin Jenkins.
Well, the applause is, I'm very lucky, really, to have been on while John completed his last commentary, and on behalf of the Test Match special team and listeners, we thank him very much indeed, and would he open that bottle of champagne a bit quickish?
And let's hope it's launching a happy retirement rather than finishing a great career. Here comes Lillian bowling on the off stump to Gower, who plays that up to mid-off. And there is no run. Gower now 15, 28 to Boycott, 69 for 2. The cricket full of tension, but the box, in a way, tense too, because that was the final 20-minute session of John Arlott's career as a Test broadcaster, although he'll be back on Saturday here for the Gillette Cup final, and I sincerely hope we'll be broadcasting and writing at least occasionally during his, what we hope will be a long and happy retirement.
Mr. John Arlott completed spell commentary for BBC on Sun Radio.
The applause was for John Arlott, his last commentary.
And Trevor, the entire Australian fielders clapping, Jeff Boycott having a clap there, and I'm sure the entire ground clapping at that announcement by Alan Curtis that John has just done his final Test match session. A moment indeed of nostalgia and a very nostalgic match.
I think it's true to say we all expected him to be rather dramatic at the end and say, thank you all the listeners for the many years of listening and all that. So he just literally just handed over to you, Trev, didn't he? And then said, after that, it'll be Christopher Martin Jenkins. And we all stood up and applauded, and he disappeared.
Yes, and after that, that was his last Test match broadcast, but in actual fact, he broadcast during the NatWest, or actually in those days it was the Gillette final, and that was his last broadcast. I've always thought his painting of word pictures was probably the best of anyone I've seen or heard. And at the very end, he was doing Van der Bijl. I always treasure this one because he comes up talking about the South African who was playing for Middlesex. Van der Bijl looking like a younger, stronger, healthier version, and it was absolutely perfect, of Lord Longford. And then having got that, there was the pause, and then, but not nearly so tolerant. I mean, it was perfect.
Well, because he had this marvellous way of painting pictures. I mean, the famous one about Asif Masood, you know.
That's right.
Pakistan, who Bill Frindle said I once called Massive Arsood. I don't think I did. But anyhow, he used to run up with these bent knees, didn't he? And John Arlott saw him the very first time. He said, it reminds me of Groucho Marx chasing a pretty waitress. And you could just conjure up that. And I thought he did the most marvellous thing. It was a great loss to us, and he's now in Alderney writing books on wine, which I think are pretty authentic anyhow, aren't they?
He had this gift with words, did John. He was marvellous.
We were talking of Blurs just now, and he's one of these lucky chaps who's often on for exciting things. And you were, I know, in the commentary box with him at Melbourne in 1983 for that sensational Test match where England just scraped home, and he described it very well, but it must have been a great surprise in the box that actually we had won that match in the end, Fred.
Well, I would think it's the only time I've ever seen England try to give a Test match away, and they nearly succeeded in doing it. They got very close. I think they got within 3 runs.
Ian Botham is going to have one last crack at Jeff Thompson, and 2.88 for 9, 4 to win for Australia, 3 to tie. Thompson has 21 and Border has 62. And Botham now bowls to Thompson. Thompson, he dropped it. He's out. He's out. He's caught in the slip. Serveret knocked it up, and it was Miller who caught the rebound. England have won by 3 runs, and the England fielders are running off the ground, snatching the stumps. Cowans has got 2 of them, and poor Thompson and Border walk back utterly dejected. Well, that was Botham's 100th wicket against Australia, and what a magnificent moment. He's got the double of 100 wickets and 1,000 runs against Australia. England have won this 4th Test match by 3 runs, equaling the lowest margin of victory. Australia beat England by 3 runs at Manchester in 1902.
I don't like really criticising, but I must admit that it was some of the worst captaincy I've ever seen. And I also would like to go a bit further by saying that the captain should not take all the blame, because there are senior players there to advise him as well. A good captain will always listen to his senior professionals if his senior professionals have got something to offer.
But Freddie wouldn't have heard him because they were all round the boundary, weren't they?
Well, they were so far away, he would have had to telephone him to get a message to him, wouldn't he?
Yeah.
There's no arguing about that.
Because he was commentators, had to be very quick, and Blurs was. He's very quick. He said he's caught. He did it very well.
Yeah, well, he thought he was on a bus.
or on a rickshaw. Another exciting one recently, 1983. Jenkins, you remember that? Prudential final?
Yes, well, that was one of the big surprises of all time in cricket, really, wasn't it? Because the West Indies, I think, were 4-1 on. They'd never lost a Prudential Cup match at all in the World Cup, and this was the 3rd competition. They'd come close to it in the first year when Pakistan ought to have beaten them, but Derek Murray and Andy Roberts had a remarkable last-wicket partnership. And then India didn't seem to have got nearly enough runs, and the West Indies perhaps for once overconfident, and a very dramatic result in the end.
140 for 9, 44 needed to win. This is the 52nd over. In comes Amarnath again. Oh, it could be LBW. It's out! Oh, Lord! LBW, he pulled across the line holding, and India have caused one of the greatest upsets in the history of all sport. They have won the 3rd Prudential World Cup, beating the hot favourites, the 4-1 on favourites, the West Indies.
My word, what a fantastic scene is here at Lord's. India have won the World Cup.
I shall never forget Farooq Engineer. He was absolutely mad. He was shouting out, "Give him a holiday, Mrs. Gandhi, give him a holiday," didn't he? Went absolutely berserk.
Yes, he did. He was very difficult to get a word in edgeways between him, actually. He was very overexcited indeed, and naturally enough so, too.
Yes, but, people go on about the West Indies. OK, they've got this wonderful fast bowling battery, but don't tell me they're a great batting side, because I won't have it. You've got Richards and Lloyd, Greenidge, if he comes off and gives them the good start. Yes, they're OK, but, they're not the great batting side people think they are.
I agree with Fred that this isn't the strongest West Indian batting side we've seen over here, but the West Indies are without doubt the strongest side in the world, both at Test cricket and also at limited overs cricket. They came unstuck against India on one occasion, but they win, I suppose, 95% of their limited overs games, and I think they'll go on doing that for some time to come. And can anyone ever forget that tremendous 100 back in 75 by Clive Lloyd, when he was really probably at the height of his powers?
And they've scored off the last 15 balls. Now difficult not only to bowl a maiden over, but apparently to bowl a maiden ball. 185 for 3, and Gilmore
My word, how life can change between Wednesday and Saturday. Still a useful bowler and still not the easiest problem for Lloyd to solve. Gilmore comes in, bowls, and Lloyd hits him high away over mid-wicket for 4. The stroke of a man knocking a thistle top off with a walking stick. No trouble at all. And it takes Lloyd to 99.
41 balls.
Lloyd 99 and 189 for 3. An umpire Bird having a wonderful time, signalling everything in the world, including stop to traffic coming on from behind. But he's left Gilmore in now, and he comes in, bowls, and Lloyd hits him into the covers. There's his 100, only half fielded out there on the cover boundary, and the century's up, and the whole ground seething with leaping West Indian delight.
Let's just reflect on funny moments either in the commentary box or out on the field. We haven't mentioned Jim Swanton, who played a big part in Test Match Special. And dear old Jim, there's so many jokes about him. I think one of the nice ones was the Trent Bridge, and he always used to have his field glasses round his neck, give his summary, which was very good, and he used to put them down on the desk in front of him and look up and say, I'll just give you the close of play score. And he did this at Trent Bridge once. He said, the most wonderful game, always remember all the details all my life. I think it's one of the greatest games of all time. And he took off his things, put them on the thing, I'll just give you the score, and he looked up and they'd switched off the electric scoreboard, and you heard the fingers snap like, boy, 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 and the chap gave him the score, but he simply couldn't remember it, and one doesn't, in fact, after a cricket match sometimes remember the actual scores. And of course we do giggle a bit in the box every now and again. We had a bit of a giggle now making this recording. And I suppose the worst giggler is the alderman. And the most marvellous occasion, I don't know if you remember it, at Edgbaston, where we got the giggles about one or two matters, actually. I remember we were discussing the Chappell brothers, in fact, how it all started. And we were discussing Ian and Greg, and then we talked about Trevor Chappell, and I remember I saying how Mrs. Chappell had helped them. She used to bowl to them in the garden. And then we said that Colin Cowdrey's wife also had helped all her boys, and that she'd taken 5 wickets against the Lure boys when she played the school, and we said that day her swingers were unplayable. And that set off the alderman. I don't know why he should laugh at that. And we then said, well, what about this Trevor Chappell? We don't know much about him, but there's one chap who does, and Earl McGillers, you see, because he knows all about the Australian people. And we looked round, and there was Earl McGillers going, absolutely sort of flat out asleep like that. And I pretended to save him embarrassment. He wasn't there. I said, he's just gone out the box at the moment. But he heard his name mentioned. He suddenly woke up and said, what do you want? And it was absolutely hysterical. The alderman ran out of the box and we really were about quiet for about 25 seconds. We were laughing so.
The other time when John Arlott was on and another box of cakes and sweets had arrived for you, and you were just packing them ready to take them home for the deep freeze for the winter. And John Arlott said, it makes you sick, doesn't it? He said, why don't they send something substantial? He said, like a bottle of champagne, Fred. And I said, yes, I quite agree with you. And lo and behold, about an hour and a half later, there was a knock on the door, and there was the young boy in the livery, brown with the pork pie hat on and everything, delivering 2 bottles of champagne in an ice bucket, which somebody had sent from some store in London. And the following Monday morning, a parcel arrived from somewhere in France where they'd been listening to Test Match Special, and lo and behold, a bottle of very expensive champagne had turned up from there, listening to John and I commentating, which is absolutely incredible.
Because we never drink it in the box, do we?
No, we always go outside.
That noise goes on sometimes. But in a moment, I'm going to ask you just to give us your outstanding moments of all your cricket career, or either on the field or in the box and so on. But before we do, I think we ought to just pay tribute to the Lord's Taverners. We're all taverners, and they do most marvellous work for charity, and they play some very, very fine cricket. And these Sunday matches are the greatest fun in the world. I only go and umpire now. I'm not very good at that either, but they do a marvellous work.
Smokes his pipe.
And I think they deserve tremendous credit for what they do, and wish them the very best of luck, and thank them for all the help they've done with this recording. So I think we now will just ask everybody for their most outstanding moment. Jenkins, on the air, which was your happiest moment, perhaps.
Well, you mentioned the taverners. It's sad to think that the original Lord's Tavern is no longer there, really. It was a great landmark in the early days when the game was played there. But my personal memory, apart from once hitting a 6 into the tavern...
Oh, did you?
...is not of that, but of winning of the Ashes. I think that's the most exciting moment that any commentator could have to describe, any English commentator anyway, and the time I was on the air was in 1977, just before Randall turned his cartwheel because he'd taken the catch. And here's Hendrick again, running into Bowl to Marsh, 63 not out. Marsh swings it high on the offside, Randall's underneath it, this could be the Ashes for England. He's caught it, they've won! The Ashes for England, Randall turns a cartwheel, the stumps are seized by the players, the crowd come onto the field, and England have regained the Ashes.
Yes, and he turned that cartwheel. The interesting thing is that no one took a photograph of it. They're all following the players back to the pavilion. And I wanted him for the front of a paperback I was doing, and we got him to do the cartwheel again at the Oval when they were practicing and put that one on the front. My moment, I'll take mine, then we'll keep the two pros for theirs after. I was again the Ashes. I was very lucky in 1953, and then, of course, in 1971, that marvellous one in midnight it was, I don't know, about 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning. We stayed open on Radio 2, and this was Ray Illingworth's team winning the Ashes in Sydney, and it was a great moment, and I always remember that catch by Fletcher at Scilly Point.
In comes Underwood again now to build a Jenner. Builds this through wide the crease, a quicker one. And he goes off bat and pad. He's caught. He's out caught. Underwood has got the wicket. He was caught there by Fletcher at Scilly Point, and England have won the Ashes. England have won the Ashes back after 12 years, and Illingworth is being cheered off by his team. He looks as if he'll fall off at any moment, and a small boy runs round and pats him on the back, and the policeman tries to stop the small boy doing it, but the small boy has had his day. And another one runs along with a white flag saying England on it.
Right, Trevor, what about your great moment, either in the box or out in the field?
I think probably from the field angle, we'll go to Jamaica when we needed to win the last test to square the series. We'd lost the first 2, we'd drawn 1, we'd won 1, so we had to win. And we'd worked it all out. Brian Statham was injured, and we decided our only hope was to win the toss on what looked an extremely grey wicket. We had to win the toss, bat, and hope we were going to bowl him out twice with Laker, Wardle and Locke. And we lost the toss. And Hutton, who was our captain, I could see his face. I mean, we walked out onto the field having to, obviously the West Indies batted, and there was a cross-wind, and I got a young fast bowler at the other end called Truman, who bowled out swingers a lot quicker than I did, and Len, being, because I was senior to Fred, said, you know, which end did I want? And I thought, well, I can't actually take downwind, helping the away swinger. I'll go into the wind, and it helped the in swinger, which I didn't bowl anyway. And I thought, well, this is it. And at the start of the day, I would have settled 3 for 120. I reckon I'd have done well. And at the end of that day, I was batting for England.
Having taken 7 for
30 odd. And it still doesn't make sense. I've never understood why.
Your best bowling performance.
Yeah, but it wasn't so much that, but I never expected it.
What about you, Fred?
Oh, it's so difficult, Brian. I suppose that every time I put on England or Yorkshire sweater, you know, I felt a very proud person. I felt a privileged person. When I played my first test match for England, it was a great thrill to see the scoreboard reading 4 wickets, no runs, and I thought that I would never see it again. And of course I saw it twice again. I saw it 4 wickets down for no runs against Oxford University, and I saw it, I think it was 1958, at Trent Bridge. I got 3 wickets in my first over, and a young fast bowler called David Pickles got a wicket with his first ball at the other end, and I saw 4 for none again. I suppose things like that stand out. But there are so many, really.
It's a great thing, isn't it, about cricket? I don't know if you're the same as me. I always go in the commentary box thinking today's cricket is going to be the best day's cricket that I've ever seen.
In comes Amarnath again. Oh, it could be LBW. It's out! Oh, Lord! LBW, he pulled across the line holding, and India have caused one of the greatest upsets in the history of all sport.
2 balls to go this over from Morris. 4 runs to get. No, is it the Ashes? Yes, England have won the Ashes.
Chappell turns, goes in again. Boycott, 96 not out. He bowls to him. It's a half volley, drives it down the ground, and there it is. He's done it. He lifts both hands in the air. Jeff Boycott has got his 100th 100.
And they've scored off the last 15 balls. Now difficult, not only to bowl a maiden over, but apparently to bowl a maiden ball. Gilmore comes in, bowls, and Lloyd hits him high over mid-wicket for 4. A stroke of a man knocking a Thistletop off with a walking stick.
And Botham now bowls to Thompson. Thompson, he dropped it. He's out. He's out. He's caught in the slip. Serveret knocked it up, and it was Miller who caught the rebound. England have won by 3 runs.
And a freaker. Oh, freaker. We've got a freaker down the wicket now, not very shapely, and it's masculine. And I would think it's seen the last of its cricket for the day.
Here's Willis in, bowls to Bright. Bright bowled! The middle stumps out of the ground. England have won. They've won by 18 runs.
It's rather good to be here when Don Bradman comes in to bat in his last test. 2 slips, a silly mid-off and a forward short leg close to him as Hollies pitches the ball up slowly and he's bowled. Bradman bowled Hollies not. Bowled Hollies not.
Come on, boys, champagne's on.
That was the lovely story. But the thing about the game of cricket we've all got to agree on, and nobody can disagree, is that what makes it the most marvellous game in the world is because it is so unpredictable.